Hello and welcome back to the Renewables podcast. You will notice we are not together in person. Sam has gone off on a trip out somewhere and I am at the office, but we didn't want to miss a week's recording. Before we get into the topic today, how are you doing, Sam?
I am good. I am good, but it's been a very stressful week. I'm down on the outskirts of Bournemouth. I'm doing a electric vehicle charging project for some new offices, which is exciting, but yeah, just stressful and been away from the family and everything like that. But in general, very good. What about you?
Yeah, all good, all good. I started off the week away from home, the same as yourself, and I had forgotten an appointment that I had to be back for. I can say that on this podcast because, as far as I know, my wife doesn't listen to this. Otherwise, I'd just drop myself straight into the doghouse. But yeah, I had to journey back up from Sidcup, which is down just on the outskirts of London, back up to Yorkshire on Tuesday, and I've been lucky enough to not have to head back. And that's kind of the theme of this podcast, I think, a little bit, isn't it,
Mm.
Sam? Kind of the day-to-day challenges we face in operating businesses in the renewables industry and also hosting a podcast about it.
Yeah, I think so. I was trying to just before this start, I was thinking, what could we call this episode? Because I've got some little notes, but these notes are so different from each other that it's not kind of a normal one like the one as we sit here now that's just gone out today, which is about earthing and bonding of solar PV and things. So this is almost like installer diaries style podcast, this one, and we're probably going to jump from bit to bit, which is good. That's what people that own businesses in this area do all the time. They jump from being a business owner to a problem out on site to scaffolding issues, which is one of my points, and just trying to juggle and spin all those plates, especially if you do other technologies like heat pumps. I can imagine it's just all those problems, just again in a different technology.
Yeah, I mean that is so true. There will be challenges in every industry, won't they? And we've got a story on scaffolding this week as well. I think that's common to all solar installers. We have ongoing battles with scaffolding companies, especially when you work nationwide like you do and we do. You know, you haven't got a
Mm,
familiar firm sometimes, have you? And it's the great unknown. But we'll maybe get to that topic later on in the chat. And I've got a
yeah.
list probably a lot like yours, which is just bouncing around so much stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, it's been a hectic one, but we'll start with yours because it sounds interesting. I want to hear all about it.
Well, so we were supposed to start recording this. Well, firstly, I'm on a bed. I don't think I'm fully addressed. Anyone that is definitely a really good podcast to just listen in the audio. Please go and watch as well. But if you can't watch this and you just listen on audio, this is a great one to listen because I'm basically just in a bed. This is a bed backboard here, and it's mainly because it's really comfy, but also the lighting is so much better next to this bed. So that is the first thing to address. But in terms of the scaffolding issue, we've got a scaffold job starting in 2 or 3 weeks up in Scotland, and we had booked the installation was actually going to go ahead next week. Um, but because of the bank holiday and because we had another job that's delayed it a little bit, we've had to basically push it back 2 weeks. So at the beginning of the week, we got in touch with the scaffolding company, cancelled it, but it's a big national company. Cancelled the scaffolding, had the confirmation that it's been cancelled from them, and then the customer has literally, they got back to the hotel today, called me to say, the scaffoldings are going up. They're about halfway through it. I didn't think it was going up today. I was like, no, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Literally, just I got back, ready to have something to eat, ready to start doing this podcast, all that sort of stuff. And then I'm like, oh my God, what we're gonna do? It's like 5 minutes to five, and I know they'll definitely finish at five. So yeah, running around trying to get hold of them to basically tell the scaffolders to take it down because I'd spoken to the scaffolder and he said, no, no, we never got any confirmation that we were postponed. Well, it's going up today. I was like, well, it can't go up today because they're going on holiday for a week or two, and then we're coming back in a couple of weeks. We went, well, it is what it is, mate. I'm putting it up. So I had to ring the actual main office of the company and say, look, your man's putting this scaffolding up. We cancelled it, and this poor lady was like, okay, I'll give him a call. So, so I don't know how that conversation went, but I can't imagine it was a very good conversation.
No, that is an especially tricky one, isn't it? When you think you've got something planned and they rock up and start chucking scaffolding up. We had one, it's probably 3 or 4 weeks ago now, where the scaffolder rung me and said it was number 21 you wanted the scaffolding up, wasn't it? Because
Oh,
no one was answering the door, and we're one lift up. But just before we finish, we thought we'd make sure, and I was like, no, it's number 12. So it started putting it up on the wrong bloody house. So you can't account for
oh,
these kind of things
oh no.
with scaffolding companies. And even the job we was on this week down in Sidcup, we'd booked it with gin wheel, guardrails, ladders, gates. And you get there and there's no ladder, there's no gates, there's no guardrails, there's no gin wheel. And the
Mm,
scaffolding deck's like 3 boards wide. And you're just like, what on earth has gone on here? And it ain't a cheap system either compared to what we pay up north when you get London prices. So
yeah.
you're expecting something that you don't get, and the quality, I guess it's a lot like our industry, to be fair, Sam. It's so varied, and we don't know what proper scaffolding companies are going to do when they rock up to site. You're relying a lot on trust and reviews on the internet, aren't you?
Yeah, you do. And the national company that we use subcontract all of them out. They've got their trusted kind of trusted scaffolders around the country. Doesn't mean they always get it right from the sounds of it, but um, we try to use local firms rather than this big national company because these things do happen when you start getting more people in the way of actually talking to the people that are the ones that are going out to site to do the work. And I suppose that's similar to solar and things. That's definitely one of the challenges as you grow, the more detached you get away from as a customer, the more detached you get away from the people that are actually going to be coming to fit it. It's just a chasm where communication can fall into, and things can end up where you've specifically asked for you know this piece of equipment or things to be put exactly here, and when you've got a big company doing scaffolding, solar, heat pumps, whatever, it can end up being one of those really easy areas for the communication just to fall down. And yeah, but it's really interesting you mentioned about the address side of things because this is slightly off topic to renewables, but it's certainly trade related. And it's a story from my dad's career. Now, there's not an awful lot that I can talk about in terms of my dad's career on this podcast because it is not adequate for broadcasting. But there was a really quick story that he told me ages ago about getting the wrong address. He'd sent one of his lads to change the front door um, of a property and got the either he got the number wrong or the guy that we went to change the front door got the number wrong, knocked on the door, no answer. So, and it was getting changed because it was basically all seized up. It was an old wooden door. So this guy, after no answer, just kicked it in, and it was actually either next door or the two doors down. And so he basically had to still do the job down the street for the person that was supposed to be doing the front door for. But then he also had to, free of charge, change the front door of their neighbour's house as well, all because of a number mix up of the house. So, and again, probably a communication mix up because I'm sure there'll have been some point where he'd have known it was, say, a green door, but then his lad was kicking in a red door. So this is all these things. It's not You're not immune even when you are smaller companies to making these sorts of mistakes.
Nah, stuff like that, you can definitely see it happen, can't you? I don't want to go fitting a whole solar system on the wrong house, though. That is a pain
No,
point I never want to experience. So,
no.
what are you actually up to down where you are, Sam? What are you on with?
So we're fitting three phase twin Rolec basic charge EV chargers. And it's for I'm not 100% sure what the company does. I don't suppose it matters really, but they're having a full office refurb. And as part of that, they're electrifying, a good chunk of their fleet, and also some of their employees are now driving electric vehicles. So they're wanting to have some EV charging functionality at the on the site. So we're doing the EV chargers. So there's three of these chargers going in. And yeah, it's just the joys of being on a semi-commercial site. It's only a very small kind of retrofit thing, but it's still got all of the trappings of a commercial site where stuff just gets launched all over the place, and you're just watching things unfold, and you're just like, oh my Lord. And people get I'd forgotten how, with most of our work being domestic, I'd forgotten how early commercial sites just wrap up. Like people are leaving, like wheeling the toolboxes out at 3 o'clock. I'm
Mm.
like, I'm thinking about like basically my afternoon. Like I'm thinking of being here till like 5:30. But literally they had to boot me out today. They were saying, are you gonna be ready for us locking this up at 4:30? And 4:30? 4:30? Like most of the afternoon's still left. But yeah, so it's an interesting one, but it's just getting into that commercial headspace after most of our jobs recently have been very domestic based.
Yeah, I'd seen some of your stories with the EV blocks. Talking
Mm,
about those, they've been out a good while now, haven't they? I think it's Trevor who invented them. I've forgotten his
Trevor,
surname,
yeah,
but
yeah,
really, really good product. We've used them a few times, and they're just an absolute game changer. I mean, if you haven't watched Sam's stories on Instagram, they're probably gone by now. But
mm,
it was just basically referencing how the cables can be left in the actual block itself, which just gives so much more wiring room, doesn't it?
yeah. It does. It's quality because I mean they are obviously more expensive than probably creating your own little shuttering and putting a bit of pipe down the center of it and then putting some concrete in. You're probably three or four times more expensive than that. But it depends how big your charger is, I suppose. But what it gives you is that complete flexibility. Like we just sent those to site. They had a parking plan from like their drawings that they have. So they knew exactly where the chargers needed to be. So they planted these EV blocks arrived, they lifted them into the hole, concreted around them, obviously with the ducting through. And after that, it's kind of they don't need to do anything else because the lid just comes off. You bolt your charger to the lid, and then you've got that chamber in the center, and that's good for leaving a bit of slack cable because the last thing you want to do is trying to pull a full new. If they change the charger and the connection's gone from the bottom, which where it is now, to the top of the charger, having that extra half a meter, you will thank yourself for that. But also an unforeseen one sometimes is future proofing. So you can like put one of these EV blocks in. So, for example, they haven't gone for this, but what we did propose was if they wanted to like future proof for future expansion, they could just actually sink the EV blocks in place and have the ducting there because you have that chamber. You can basically run the ducting straight down the line of the EV blocks and then just cut the top of the ducting out, and then you've got access to pulling new cables in the future. And the EV block is just looks like a manhole cover if it obviously if it's not got an EV charger bolted to it. So you can quite easily future proof, say like a new build or something like this where it's kind of they may be looking at expanding the EV charging infrastructure in the future. So they're an absolutely mint product. I wish they were half the price, but I could say that about a lot of things.
There's
But
some
they
weight
they
to
are
them, isn't there? Definitely some weight to
oh
those blocks.
yeah, they are. And there's loads of different types now. I remember when I first started, there was three types. I think there's about five or six now. So, you can get some of the real small ones, narrow ones that still give you a little bit of a chamber, but are maybe more suited to a domestic kind of situation.
So how's that work for you then now while you're out on site looking EV blocks around trying to get chargers installed, but you've still got inquiries kicking off, scaffolding going off? Are you dealing with that firefighting through your day, or do you let it build up and tackle it at the end of a working day?
So the first thing I do in the morning is I uninstalled Microsoft Teams. No, I wish I could. I wish I could. So um, yeah, so it's just really like yesterday when I had Mike with me, I could be a little bit more kind of on a call whilst I was helping Mike do bits and bobs because there's another pair of hands there. But when you're on your own, my head was so into trying to get this job done because I'm leaving tomorrow, which will be Friday as we record now, and I've got like a 4.5 hour drive back up. So I'm like just pushing and pushing and pushing, trying to get as far on as I can. And that's why I was a little bit frustrated that we had to leave at kind of 4:30 because I had an extra hour there that I could easily have done. So yeah, I mean, I haven't actually had many calls today, but you do get calls throughout the day, usually from some customers that have my number, but also the office and what have you. The office are quite good at handling things in-house, but it means that if you do get a call, it means it's not an easy problem to solve. It means it's one that's kind of like, right, we need you to make a call on this and either go this way or that way, because all the easy stuff gets dealt with within the office. And yeah, so I do make the mistake sometimes of refreshing my emails and have a look whilst I'm having a drink. I'm just like, why have I just done that? There's nothing in here that can't wait till I'm back home, but it just takes your mind out of the job. But it is a challenge, isn't it? I mean, you face it as well. You must have those sort of challenges when you're away and you kind of think, oh, I wonder what has been happening today, and you have a look and you go, why have I just done that?
Yeah, I mean, we had it with the signs that were supposed to be going up here the other week. You came to visit actually on the day they were
Mm,
supposed to have been put in when you're checking emails and you're seeing stuff. But it's the common thing, isn't it? I feel the guilt when I'm on site and something's happening that I need to deal with, and all of a sudden you've got to stop installing the inverter that you're part of the team on site looking after that. And then you think, are the other guys looking at me thinking I'm slacking off or skiving or something? Because they've literally got no idea what you're actually doing. So
no.
I feel that guilt in the team out on site fitting this stuff. I don't know if you get that.
Yeah, I absolutely do get that. I always just tell them if they because they do make comments like jokey comments. I just say that I'm busy securing their future. So that's basically the line that I use. But yeah, it is you go from and we've touched on this probably on various podcasts that we've done over the last year and a half, but you have those kind of that development as a tradesperson going from the point where it's just you, your van, you kind of master of your own demise as you've used on one of the podcasts as a term. Um, and then you start employing people, you become responsible for their work, keeping them busy so that the company can keep them and kind of grow. But also, you're responsible for their wages and the stress that that brings. And to keep that funnel flowing, you need to sometimes step away from what you're doing on site to go, well, if we want to have work in the next couple of months, as with kind of how solar works in terms of lead times and things, I need to be dealing with this stuff now, and we need to be securing a pipeline now. And that in itself can be a bit stressful because traditionally, if you win a rewire, you've got the second fix coming up, you've got the testing, they'll probably call you back to change some light fittings and all of that. But in renewables, you kind of once you're done, unless there's a problem, that's kind of it. They're not ringing you up, to add an extra two or three panels, next year or whatever. Usually, sometimes you do, but the vast majority of them, it's kind of one and done, isn't it? Really, but yeah, it's a tricky one to try and balance for sure.
Yeah, it is. I mean, keeping the order book full is one of the most stressful things I think most business owners have when you've scaled, because you do need that continuous volume of work to not just feed yourself, but feed other people, your business included. And it does get really, really stressful. I certainly feel that from time to time as well. And when you're away from home and your support network of your family, the rest of your business team, it can be quite isolating for us as business owners, I think, to carry the weight of that around alongside delivering the actual work task we're on site doing. And I get those questions coming back into Apprentice One-to-One from trainees as well. They'll be moaning about their bosses, generally when they're moaning about their wages as well. Like, we get paid
Mm,
nothing. He's getting all the big bucks. He's got the nice car. He's never on site doing anything. I'm not even sure what he does. And for when you're coming into industry, I've been in that position where you view things like that, but it's not the reality. Those people are carrying around massive pressure and stress, and it's not an easy role to do. As much as you might think that when you're the person out doing the work, it is quite difficult and stressful. I promise you, it really is.
yeah, it is, and I think sometimes, I've had employees that have left and set up on their own and all of that, and I think until you do that, you don't necessarily realize what it was like beforehand when you were maybe thinking, oh, the boss got an afternoon off. Right. He has generally got an afternoon off, but he hasn't turned his phone off. You're still messaging him about a problem on site, or customers still ringing about a scaffolding that's going up 2 weeks early, or whatever. These things don't stop, and I think it's really hard to know that, being an employee, if you've never been in that situation, to actually realize that is very difficult on their side, as well as, for us, we're thinking, oh, I'd love to be an employee, just turn off at the end of the day. But then on the employee side, they're potentially looking at when those situations arise for us that we just mentioned, Mark, where you have like a call that you've got to do, or you've got to do some emails, or you've got to send some messages, or whatever, and you're sat in the van doing that, they're looking at thinking, oh, he's just letting us do all this work. So it can be like a two-way misunderstanding, but until you feel that other side of the coin, I think it's very hard to kind of sympathize with that. And because I know that definitely hit me when I started to become busier, and when I was self-employed, for looking back during my apprenticeship.
Oh, for sure. You'd see your boss sat in the van and think they're scrolling TikTok or Instagram or something, but really they're checking the bank balance, moaning about people
Yeah,
not paying them, trying to get
yeah.
something sorted out. It's just the world you don't see. And it's easy to get, a misconception around that, isn't it? But you had an interesting project last week. I don't know if you can talk about it because it's still super secret, I think, in what you've actually been up to. But that brought you some extra pressure again.
Yeah, yeah. So we can say that it's a grand designs project, but I can't really say anything else until the blooming thing is out. We've got some mint footage, and I've been sitting on some other mint footage for like over a year, and it's just so frustrating. But it's one of those where every single job you want to deliver a really high quality like finish. That's for us in my company, and for you and yours as well, Mark. I assume, and after seeing sort of standard work you guys kick out, it's kind of like you always want to give people like that top quality end result. And what I've always said is that I want a customer to walk into a garage or a plant room, or whatever the job is, and go, wow, that is worth that money that I've spent, like coming out, getting people around to have a look and all that sort of stuff. But when you know that potentially there's going to be like, I don't even know how many people watch Grand Designs, but like tens of thousands of people watching it, it adds an extra layer to that, because we've all seen like these things on like Clarkson's Farm, or these things where as spark is you don't turn it off, and it'll be the same with plumbing and heating engineers. They look at something and they go, why have they done that? Or you just see it, you see an armor that hasn't been clipped right, or you see it, you see all these things in the background of these shows. And I want people to, in the background of this job, be looking at it with a critical eye, and be going, oh, I can't actually spot anything. And that does add some pressure. Um, but equally, I'm trying not to let it overcome me, because equally, like, it's a job of a lifetime. Like, it's a job of a career. Like, these sort of jobs don't come along that often. And I know you sent me some voice notes during that week, and we're back there next week, about sort of trying to enjoy that, because it is one of those situations that is quite a blessed one, really, because not everybody gets to do them, and I am very grateful for getting the opportunity to do it, but I've just got to deliver it.
I'm sure you will. Everyone will be snagging you looking for the wood screw next to the normal 8.5 inch screw that you've popped into a cleat somewhere to snag you on it. You know it's going to happen. That's what people
Yeah,
do in it. As long as
yeah.
Kevin McLeod doesn't look up and say, "Why are those short solar panels all on the wonk?" Then you're fine, mate. You'll be laughing.
Yeah, that's two more things now I've got to worry about on that job.
No, it is. It's an exciting thing for you to be involved with, and you guys will absolutely smash that. We know you will. So it'll be a good one. I've had
Bless.
a little thing on my list from our project this week, and it's a new tile on us. We're still like 2 or 3 years in on this, and when I'd surveyed that job, I'd seen it was Redland Delta tile. So those ones with a little V. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
Mm,
They've got like a V-shaped point on them.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'd supposed to have ordered in like 20 for that job, thinking that it might break. Unfortunately, I had done that wrong and ordered pan tiles. And then the guys turn up and we're trying to find those ready for that project. So that was kind of a me mistake. But yeah, it's one of those pressure points that can spring up when you are working away from home. So I was off down the local reclamation yard, down in Stuart Cato territory, actually, in the end.
Wow.
finding some of those last minute. And as it was, they smashed exactly 0 tiles, I think, and didn't even need any. But yeah, that's how it goes, isn't it?
Yeah, I've had those situations. Probably, I think even with those tiles I only know them because I saw them on your stories. Um, and we had a job that was similar. I don't think the peak on the ones that we had was as high as yours. Can't remember if they were double peaked as well, but there were some obscure ones, and I did exactly the same. I was like, I'll take some good photos and I'll find these beforehand because if we smash any of these, it's gonna be a nightmare. Job came and I had done none of that. And so I had to do exactly the same as you and call around the reclamation yards. And because they were quite old, it was quite hard to make out some of the writing on the back as well. So that involved taking pictures and sending those over and all this sort of stuff. And they also cost like 3 times as much because they are reclaimed, which and they usually are like those specialist ones are usually quite hard to come by. So they cost a good pretty penny. So if you manage to get away without breaking any, then happy days. But yeah, we had quite a few breakages on the ones that we did. Maybe we're just more heavy footed. Maybe
I
maybe
don't think
that's
so.
it.
Matthew works for me. He's got size 15 boots and stomps around like a bloody elephant. So that's not going to be the case. But yeah, we got done on those tiles that I did buy in the end. I think they were like £4.80 each. She's like, yeah,
Mm,
I've been done there. But there you go. So it's the seller's market, isn't it? When you stood there in desperate need of some. So
yeah.
that was an interesting one that popped up onto me. One of the other
Mm,
points that I wanted to chuck your way was a question I popped on Instagram yesterday around vans because we're looking at changing our fleet of vans a little bit. Everyone who follows me will know I've opted for an electric one, which I've not been especially thrilled with. I'm going to be totally honest. And
mm,
the guys have been complaining at me about the size of the vans we're running, like medium wheelbase Renault Traffic style van. It's the Nissan Prime Star, whatever they're called, and
yeah.
it's just not big enough. So I've put those questions out there into Instagram and had such a varied response. So I know what your views are on the best size van to operate as a solar installer.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question because we're in the process of looking for another one or two vans, potentially for some new hires and all that sort of stuff. So and I've often toyed about going for like the long wheelbase, like big sprinter vans, like what Dan at DMH has got, and a few others. I think Bennett Evo's got. But the issue with that is you can fit whatever you wanted in there. Rails can just be laid on the floor, like whatever you want, you can fit in there. But it's parking it, and if you're doing a lot of working away jobs, it's like finding hotel parking for it. It's also parking on people's driveways because in my company, Dean and others take vans away from the site or like the main office and go home in those vans. So it's kind of like right jumping up from a custom like what we've got a Ford Custom or a Traffic like what we've got long bit wheelbase ones, but jumping from those up to like a big Sprinter van, man, I just don't know if they would be able to park it in like on like a residential street every single night. And so I've come away from going for like one of those really big massive vans and and I'm sticking with the long wheelbase Transit Customs or Renault Traffics, and just going with that because you can fit panels in those vans. Just depends how much other stuff you got to fit in there, but a lot of these places are delivering stuff pretty easily now as well. So yeah, I think unless you can guarantee that you can have the parking space, and if you don't work away a lot I think the big vans could be handy, but I think you can get away with the long wheelbase customs or traffics or similar vans. The long wheelbase ones only give you about an extra 200 mil or something like 300 mil, but it makes a difference when you're trying to squeeze nearly 2 meter panels in that back of that van.
Yeah, I would share a screen grab of my WhatsApp group chat with the guys from today because they sent me a picture of the back of their van leaving the job site, and you'll know what that looks like, Sam. You won't need me to tell you, but
Yeah,
it's like they've tried to ram everything in there and shoulder barged in a bit extra to what should fit, and then rammed the doors shut. And they're messaging me that they want bigger vans, they want these big ones, but I don't think they've really thought about those points you've just made. That's really interesting,
mm,
and something I'd not really thought about is actually parking those on customer drives. I don't think a long wheelbase would have fit on the customer's drive from this week. And with it being in sort of Sidcup in London, there's no on-street parking, so you kind of stuck with that. And then, like you say, parking it at home on an evening, hotels. So while it works really well for shipping stuff around, the logistics of dealing with that outside of that part is actually quite difficult. So yeah, I might reevaluate that again and maybe look more towards these longer wheelbase, medium-sized vans that we've got already, but maybe having an extra one or two of them rather than a big mothership style vehicle.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you've got two people going to a job, two of the long wheelbase customs is a really good size van because you can still park it on most vehicle on most driveways. You can get it into hotels fairly easily. That for me is the one really. But I did mention that my list was quite strange,
Let's hear
and
some of this.
I was just driving along, coming back to the hotel, and there was a on the radio there was a story about putting solar panels in space. Now, stay with me. So, so, that's obviously a lot of work in a way if you started to do that, but that is not the space panels that I'm necessarily talking about here. It was more about they started to talk about the technology on Earth, as in, where these panels are going, and they were talking about the makeup of these panels being mainly silicon based, and um, and how they're looking to try and lift the efficiency from the 22 to 24% up to 30 plus percent efficiency. And um, firstly, an interesting point that they made was that in space you've got for every say 1 watt that you could generate on Earth, you can generate 1.3 watts up in space, but also keep it in the sun all the time. So the size of surface area that you need up there is much less. But the main point was that they're experimenting with a different semiconductor in these panels now, which is I've written it down here, but I still don't think I'm going to pronounce it right. It's like goth gothium or something like that. And it's basically something that they're looking to stack in front of the silicon to take it up to about 35% efficiency. So instead of just these panels becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, hopefully we can try and keep the frame size because I feel like certainly domestically we're kind of at a bit of a limit now because we're kind of up at like nearly 2 meters, and most domestic properties have maybe like a 4 meter just over a 4 meter rake on the roof from ridge to gutter. Then you've got your guidelines from your top and your bottom, your sort of your spacings. And so you can't really go much bigger in terms of frame size. So you have to start looking at the different things that you can do to increase that efficiency, but keep the frame size to be, more compatible with what is a standard roof. Unless we're going to start, having massive overhangs on these, we've got to keep keep things sensible in terms of the size of the panels. So yeah, so that was quite good, and they reckon that that'll get us up to a 35% efficiency. So that might be an interesting development.
Yeah, that's a good number to get, isn't it? And the panel sizes, I'd echo that. I mean, it's moving them around as well, isn't it? Aside from fitting them in the roof space that's there, if you've got a 40-degree pitch and so you've like got a 2.5 meter long panel, if it's going to get even bigger, that just becomes a mammoth ask of the new installation team, isn't it? Imagine that job
Yeah.
you had the other week with all Envelux windows in a row, trying to get 2.5 meter panels amongst all that lot. It's just, yeah, it's not easy, is it? And the,
No,
the
no.
space thing is interesting in terms of forgetting the actual development of efficiency. What they're doing with them is it powering stuff in space? Are we going to have like mile long cable back to planet Earth to run everyone's
Well,
TVs on?
this is the thing. I don't fully understand how you could get the cable, how you get the power down from space. I mean, they were on about that that solar energy in space is growing in terms of like us using it because we're sending so many satellites up and all that sort of stuff. But how you actually, whether or not you charge batteries and then fire those batteries back down, or I don't know. I genuinely don't know how they're going to do it, and that's why they're in charge of that and not me. But but they run about of trying to sort out a system whereby the panels go up, but you can't just send like 1762 by 1134 panel out there and just go, there you go. So like a fold out panel. So it's a bit like a oh, what do you call them? Where you have them like that, you fold them oh, I can't remember what they're called, but basically fold them like paper, and then they unfold into like this big sheet. It's more of a foil system, I think, really. But they yeah, and then they generate. But like I say, the efficiency is so much higher up there because you've got colder temperatures, so things are going to operate better. You haven't got the atmosphere where it's making the irradiance slightly weaker, and also you can keep it in the sun all the time. So that increases the efficiency of that system massively than compared to one down on Earth. But yeah, I don't know, it's just like a massive extension lead coming down. But then the Earth is spinning, so it must have to try and keep. I don't know. I don't
It's a
know.
mind melt, isn't it, at that level?
I
Be
can't.
like
Yeah, I can't work it
massive
out.
inductive wireless charging system of some sort. But yeah, it's crazy the stuff that's been innovated right now. So we're laughing about it, but I bet in 5 or 10 years there'll be something probably that Elon Musk's invented that we're actually doing, and there'll be astronaut versions of Ovaldino and Josh up there
Yeah,
unwrapping
yeah,
solar panels out in space.
yeah. That would be a hell of a commute, wouldn't it? It'd be like the new going to work on the oil rigs. You'd be going to working on the space panels, wouldn't you?
Different element
Yeah.
of danger money and a half for that journey, that's for sure. So is
Yeah,
anything
no,
else on
exactly.
your list you wanted to touch
Yeah.
on?
So, um, I kind of like posing myself a question because it wasn't completely, it was actually a day or two ago. I was like, I was having a bit of a rough time at work in terms of like stress and stuff. And I'm not thinking of leaving it. Don't worry. I'm not thinking of leaving the renewables world, but I was like, and it reminded me about this question because when I was listening to the radio thing about the panels, it reminded me about this question I asked myself. I was like, what would I do if tomorrow they unfurled these, space panels and suddenly power was unlimited, it was cheap, and so people were like, well, that's it. I don't need panels. I don't need batteries. It cost me a pence per kilowatt hour. None of these factories need it. All this other sort of stuff. Would I stay as an electrician in terms of, would I go back into domestic electrics, or would I go into, commercial space, or, I don't know, what would I do? And so part of me was like, I think I would probably take the opportunity to just do something completely different, just completely work like I don't even know what it would be, but I think I would kind of be like, that's been a good run. That's been, I've done the renewables in my little way in the country. It's now the energy crisis has been solved. I think I'm going to do something different. What would you do? I've completely sprung this upon you, but I just don't know if I could get as excited about putting sockets, and this is not to attack anyone that does that, but I just don't know if I could re-energize my excitement to go back into all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, at the minute, I'm kind of doing a bit of that with a training space, I suppose. So that's
Mm,
kind of where
yeah.
I would probably look to go if renewables was taken off the table. But if we're talking about like doing something entirely different, I don't know. I've always quite fancied doing some low pressure in terms. I'm probably going to really diminish the gardening world now, but been like a landscaper doing gardening, just riding
Oh
around on
yeah.
a mower somewhere, cutting some grass, just chilling out, digging the odd hole where there's not a lot of pressure in any of that, out in nature, and they get well paid as well. So maybe look towards that.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah,
you? What would you be
I
doing?
I think I would. I don't know. I think I would just. I genuinely don't know because renewables takes up so much of my life. Like my entire thinking from the minute I wake up, it's about either the renewables business, or I've seen an article on something, or so my brain is kind of like my brain is just going to be like, I ain't got anything for you, Sam, because
You're all in.
you
You're all in.
you
This is
haven't
it.
you haven't given me any time to think about it. So it's kind of like, I genuinely don't know, but it's one of those things, isn't it? If the energy crisis was solved, does that will have been done through technology. So you're kind of like, right, well, that technology probably needs rolling out or something like that. So, never say never on the space panels. It might happen. But it couldn't be these these little nuclear reactors and all this other sort of stuff that they're talking about. Solar and battery isn't the be all and end all. And I think to get to a point of like a renewable future with energy, it's going to be a massive mix of all these different things. It's not just one size fits all, unless there's like this huge breakthrough in one bit of technology that just dwarfs everything else. But my personal view is that I think it'll be a complete mixture for security reasons, but also just for getting this equipment to the places that need it, and having wind turbines in areas that are struggling for power and all this sort of stuff. It's also attached to the grid, as we found out with Jamie, but having that generation out that way to just try and keep things rolling and balance the grid, I think is a good thing. So yeah, I don't know. I think it would still be something that I would get excited about, but it would also depend how old I was when all that happened.
Yeah, I
If it
think you're
happened
good. I
next
think you're
week.
good for 10 or 15 years, mate. I think you're on an upward trajectory in the world of demand for the kind of spaces that we operate our businesses.
Mm,
I don't see that changing. I know there's some chat from how things are slowing down in certain sectors, not just in renewables, but in the electrical industry as a whole, since the new government came in and the stuff that's going on there. And we see all the stuff about these extra workers in construction, don't we, for the new homes that are getting put up as well. So there's lots of fanciful political claims around stuff, but I think more widely with renewables and the trajectory we've adopted as a nation and even worldwide, that you're going to be fine. And it's good that there's people like you interested and invested in that who want to
mm.
do it. There's nothing wrong with being obsessed with renewables and solar panels. It's totally normal, mate. Totally normal.
Yeah, well, you just have a word with the wife about that, because I don't think she always thinks that that's the case. But I think, the point about the trade side of things, I think there's never been a better time to try and to become an electrician. Like we are plumbing heating engineers, builders, all these sorts of things, because we are we are in it, whether or not we like it or not, at the minute of this massive AI revolution. And I think one of the main places that is going to benefit from what AI can bring are tradespeople, because like when I was making these isolators off, and it was really hard to get these two 5 core 10 mil SWAs landed into the bottom of this isolator, and I was fighting the cores, trying to make it look neat and all this other sort of stuff. And I was thinking, there is no way that a Tesla robot is doing this. Like, there is no way it's got the dexterity to do this. And even just to, plan how the SWAs are going to flow off this cable train to it's not gonna be able to do that in any close time frame. I might be completely wrong, and it might do it way better than me. I don't know, but it was one of them where I was looking at thinking we're safe here with our jobs in terms of construction. And so, this podcast isn't necessarily, down to people that are maybe thinking of starting out. But I think if you are at that early stage in your career, you're not sure what to do in terms of, become a tradesperson or go into marketing and all of that. Like, you just cannot get rid of the skills that you learn through colleges and places like your building, Mark, but also just through having the experience of having done installations and be able to use your hands. And you can't take that away from somebody, even if there is an AI revolution. And tradespeople like us can use AI um, very effectively to help increase productivity in on the sides of things that we don't like doing, like proposals, pricing, all this other sort of stuff. Test forms, like there's that new trade cert one, and all these other things. Like, there's so many different things that you can use AI for rather than being replaced by it. And I think tradespeople are in a massive advantage. And there's a massive shortage of us, because who knows who's going to build all these houses that they claim that are going to get built over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about the AI thing and robotics side, because you kind of look at like the motor vehicle industry. They had a big robotics drive, didn't they, where there was a lot of staff that were replaced by machinery. And you start wondering, well, could that happen to trades? And I don't think it really could, because they're kind of factory-based setups and the machines cost an absolute fortune. And it is very much like the same process, monotonously on a production line. This is what it does. Whereas, as you've just said, out in the world of construction, you can be knee deep in a trench trying to wire off some isolators with different size cabling, different sized isolators. It's so varied, isn't it? There probably is a way to innovate something that could do it, but it'd be so costly. It's just cheaper to let the humans keep doing it. I think we're going to be fine on that front for a good
Yeah.
old while. And like you say, with the AI in terms of running your business and the stuff you can get that to do now, even if it's just chatting with it to some degree about, I've got this proposal that I'm working on. Can you kind of redraft bits and pieces here where normally you'd maybe bat that around yourself for half a day? AI's cleaned that up in like a minute, and it's just
Mm.
so useful, isn't it? And there's been other podcasts that have discussed that, and I think the testing one is a good example of that, because I think it was Sam and Jamie have the creator of that on their podcast, or it
Yeah.
might have been a different podcast. I'm sure it was those guys,
Yeah,
and
it was.
they were speaking about what that can do, and I just thought that is an absolute game changer. Being able to put like a picture in of an existing board and get a test set pre-populated with all the breakers. It's like, man alive, I wish that existed when we were still writing these test sheets out 20 years ago, getting wrist cramp.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. And you make one spelling mistake and it's just it knackers the full thing up. But yeah, it's a really advantageous position to have a trade, but also to just put all your energy into being really good at it. Because I know we've just been talking about what would you do if, you had to change job and everything like that. But I think I'm not going to say the younger generation because I think the younger generation do get tarnished with a lot of stuff that isn't actually their fault. But there is the sticking power of going through an apprenticeship is quite tricky because you get all of the hardest jobs, you get all of you don't necessarily get the best pay for it, and it's all in the hope that it all works out in the future. And when you're looking for a job at that stage, what a lot of people I think look to try and do is like earn a little bit more money out of, changing from one apprenticeship or one provider to another and all this other sort of stuff to try and earn a little bit more money. But I think if I was to have my time again in my apprenticeship, I would look for the amount of varied work that there would be. Obviously, I've got the hindsight of knowing that it all worked out and I became qualified and I've got my own business and things now. But I think one thing that I would love to do instead of it just being purely not purely renewables, but very renewables heavy when I did my apprenticeship, I think I would have tried to chop and change a little bit and look at other places that would have given me some other experience out there as well. Um, but yeah, the staying power of being an apprentice for 3 to 5 years is a tricky one and not one that is always comparable with other parts and other industries, really, like other jobs. It's a physical job. You're out in all weathers, and you're the butt of most of the jokes on site, and you're not getting paid the best. But my kind of message to people that are in that position now, because we've got an apprentice, is that you just got to stick it out because the market just opens up. And if you can just really put all your focus into being good at that bit of work that you do day after day, if you're an electrician, you're here. If you're a good electrician, you will never be short of work. And that I'm sure it's the same for plumbing and heating engineers and other people like that. So yeah, and until there is an unlimited power source that we find, I think there is a lot of work left in renewables.
Yeah, for sure. The apprenticeship one is a good point in terms of the varied work we can give apprentices. I don't know if you find that in your business, but we've been thinking about that because we're looking at taking another apprentice in this September as Nathan's finished his training, and our business has changed since we started Nathan on from being like a bit of a varied employer to very much been renewables focused now. And you
Yeah,
look at kind of all the different wiring types and bits and pieces that need covering off, and it's a hard one as an employer to deliver all elements of that. So we're looking at that quite carefully at the minute because there is kind of the domestic electrician apprenticeship, which is a bit more renewables focused, but then you kind of pigeonholing someone a little bit towards that as well. So it's a tricky one with apprenticeships, but you're dead right. You've just got to grab onto an employer that's decent and will give you that opportunity and see you through. Because I get messages every single day from people desperate just for a job and they can't get one because they're in the job roles out there in the numbers we need. which doesn't equate to the kind of skills crisis everyone builds up that industry's got and all these extra new people. There's a massive, the maths don't math there. But that's a separate podcast and a separate discussion
Yeah.
for another time.
Yeah, it is, but I think it's to have the right to have people doing work on site is different to having people that know how to do the work. It's like you can have someone say, right, put that bit of cable tray up there, but do they know how to, form a bend on it, or do they, know how to properly, galvanize the ends and all this other sort of stuff where you're like, you can tell people to do things and they'll do it to the best of their ability, but there's a difference between that and then training someone to do it, themselves and know how to get around problems and things like that. And that's what I think some employers are worried about in terms of having to spend all of that time showing people that. But it's kind of that, teach a man to fish kind of analogy where you might have to spend that, a couple of hours to start with showing them how to do the most basic things. But as soon as they've got that, it snowballs and they can do more and more. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's probably a different podcast on that one. But yeah, it's an interesting time for renewables for sure.
One of the other little things I had on my list was fitting panels on roofs where nothing's symmetrical, straight or level. So we've had
Yeah,
that of late where I was looking at, we put some panels on. I was winding Matty and Nathan up big time, I think. So I had them reset them about 5 times because the chimney wasn't square, the ridge wasn't level or plumb, and neither was the gable end. And every which way around we put these panels, by eye, when you looked at it from ground, something looked off. And it's like when you're up there working on these systems and you want it to look right, that's not always level and plumb with solar panels. I don't know if that's just me or if you see that as well.
oh, absolutely. This is when Oval started. Um, I hadn't done that many actual like full roofs on my own because it was when I was employed, it was mainly the electrical side and everything like that I did. And I was just terrified of putting 16 panels on a roof and it looking wonky. And this was when Ollie started with me as well. And so I remember there was a couple of the really early jobs that we did. We had those panels on and off that roof, like literally pretty much the full thing installed and off the roof because it was running out and this, that, and the other. And I think I put something on my Instagram recently about it where we had a job in Watford and it was exactly the same. The ridge was all over the place, the verges were all over the place, the gutter was all over the place. And all you can do in that situation is just spy it in. And it's like people take the mick out of that phrase, but you hit the nail on the head there when you said you want it to look right. That's the only measurement that you can do in that situation. It has to just look right with the eye, and then try and match it into the tile lines going up and stuff because it could be you could select, right, we'll make this plumb with the verge, but then when you stand back in the garden and you're looking at the panels, you see a big bit of roof and then the ridge at this side, and then you just see the ridge at the other side. So all you can do is basically have someone down on the ground or send someone down and go, right, we've got a couple of these panels on now. Have a little look. How does it look like? What does it look like? And it's like it's horrendous when you're up there, stood at the gutter, and you're like, but this is the tape measure's saying this is miles out, but you have to just trust that it just has to look right because sometimes these certainly more of these older roofs, they're all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, we were stitched up on that one, I think, by the builder who'd fitted the Velux, the one who'd fitted the chimney, and the original house builder, because nothing was done as it should have been. But I guess when the first person's done it out of square and plumb, everyone just kind of has to follow into line after that.
Yeah,
And we're no different with solar panels. I remember your story actually on that. I did see it. That was some rosemary tiles, I think, which is
yeah,
even worse because they're small, of like bit of exposed tile, and you've got that is really more obvious to your eye, isn't
mm,
it, than anything else? So a
yeah.
challenge of a solar installer.
It's very, very tricky, and a lot of the time it's when you've got a smaller gap. So if you have a lot of space above the ridge, above the panels to the ridge, or a lot of space from the bottom of the panels to the gutter, but you say like right on the 300 or 500 mil to the edge of the side, like you've got to make that bit look right. So between the edge of the panel to the verge, that bit has got to look right when you're standing in the garden, because you won't notice 50 mil over the course of that full, or even 100 mil over the course of the top of the system when you've got a big, if you've got like half a meter well, if you've got like say a meter gap to your ridge or whatever, you won't see that 100 mil difference, but you will see it if you run away to nothing on the verge. So it's kind of like you have to a bit of experience. You find this out, and you almost need to have that system that you could not fit straight away. You had to like take it on and off 3 times to realize that actually it's just the nature of trying to make it look right that you have to just spy it in, and you come back to that phrase because it looks horrendous when you're up on the roof and you tape measure, you're like, but it's miles out. You stand back in the garden, you're like, that looks dead on. And that is the main thing that matters really.
Yeah, I think when we had that job, and you're right, it was just spied in the end. It's the first time we used Volcase, and Matty and Nathan were looking at me like, it's the mounting system. It's like, this is what's doing it. It's not right. It's like, no, it isn't. It's just because everything else is out of square and nothing straight, and you're just working with a bad deck of dark cards to start with. But
Mm.
yeah, that's kind of the culmination of my list of stuff. Apart from one other thing, if you've got anything else on yours you wanted to
No, that's
cover.
that's it. No,
'Cause
that's all
I know you're
my
a
list of
busy
bits.
man this evening, so I don't want to keep you. But I've been waffling on a little bit about meter cabinets and single insulated cables in them, as a
Mm.
few other people of industry, and got another conversation coming up with the NIC and ESF about that as a right to reply after a video I shared last week. But I just wondered your views on that before we end this chat, because I'm sure you've come across it when we're trying to retrofit solar, and the meter cab's got a great big chunky steel wire armor in there that someone's wired off badly, and you're left trying to deal with that. So how do you see it?
Oh, I think I commented or reshared or did something with a post you put out on LinkedIn about this, and it's like if you pick out say 10 electricians that you respect, I can guarantee that not one of them would find this practice of stripping the armorings back, taping them up, or like glanding them into one of them little L plates, and then having just a single insulated cores into the bottom of bottom of a mains isolator. But none of them would say that that's acceptable. It's all to do with speed. It's all to do with not potentially having the skills to do it. Like I've had to very early in my business career when I wasn't doing an awful lot of solar. I had to do a couple of EICRs, which are a pain in themselves. But to actually rectify some of this stuff, and I always fell down on the side that it's single insulated conductors. So trying to like put a little bit of trunking in there and then gland it into the top of the trunking and then run it into the switch fuse. And yeah, it's a very, very tricky. You haven't got a lot of space to do it in, but equally that needs to be assessed when you're planning the install. And it's like, yeah, it's just shonky, and it's not. It, I think like my comment to you on LinkedIn was that the regs are like a floor, not a ceiling, and it's we're in the cellar with that because
Mm.
we are just not nobody that has any respect for what they do as an electrician would look at that and go, "Yep, that's all right." Where it's at the height for kids, it's somewhere that the homeowner's given the key for, all this other sort of stuff, and you're just like you're looking at it thinking that looks terrible. That looks terrible. And, there's just so much more opportunity to get fingers and things in, or the bit of the single insulation gets caught and it's directly into the copper. It's just, yeah, it's terrible, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, even for meter operators and us as an electrician going in there to do some work, we might have to make an isolation or whatever with single insulated cables, regardless of the consumer aspect. It's not the best design. And the thing that's the big problem with it for us when we turn up to a job to fit PV, and we're seeing that, and you need to put a gateway in, you generally need to interact with what's been done and sort it out. And I've had some comments on my YouTube videos before when we've put a switch fuse in there to try and like gland the steel wire armor that someone shonked into that box in a way that isn't kind of dangerous, and you end up with these trolley horrible comments on your own content when you're just trying to deal with a problem someone
Mm,
else has put in there. And I don't think the industry of things is really thinking about that carefully enough. If every new build estate, it's maybe an exaggeration to say every, but a lot of them have been set up like that, because this is going to be a growing problem as we retrofit solar into those places where that needs dealing with. And it's like, how do we then do it when a steel wire arm has already been cleated in a wall somewhere or fixed into the fabric of the building? You've got no slack to play with, and you're fighting a losing battle with one arm tied behind your back from the beginning. It seems like a mess that I think they should get straightened out, and whether they listen or not remains to be seen.
Yeah, it is a mess, and every day there'll be more and more of them going in, and you need to get in front of it a little bit at this point now, because it becomes the standard. We've just been talking about, apprentices. Apprentices will be going to these properties and going, oh, that's how they do it, and then they teach their future apprentices to do it. And so if the regulations don't be clear and come down on it, a bit like the outdoor consumer unit side of things, then that's how people get taught how to do it. And so they continue to do it. They tend to, then they then teach others how to do it like that. And suddenly you become the minority in people wanting to do it like what you did, Mark, with the switch fuse putting in there. And I remember that one of them ones that you did, and I was like, I think I even messaged you saying that is going to be an absolute nightmare to fit that in that meter box, because the space that you needed for that switch fuse was not the space you had. And yeah, it was very, very tight for you. And I've seen it where they've put in a second meter box next to the one that is there for the electric. So they've basically had the meter and the isolator there, and then in the meter box it's like a brick along, they've had the switch fuse there. So maybe, if they do need to put it in armored, maybe that it needs to go into an enclosure like that, where you've still got the double insulated tails, meter tails between the two boxes, but then you've got this big, 60 amp, 80 amp, 100 amp switch fuse sat there, where you've got all of the meter box to play with, and you can gland that armored cable directly into the switch fuse without half of it being taken up by the meter head and the meter itself.
Yeah, I think it's adequate space, isn't it? At the point of utilization to homes, we need to increase the size of that, regardless. Those tiny little boxes are not fit for purpose really anymore. But whether that ever gets changed, probably not. But yeah, that's me done on all those things we've run through. Sam, I just want to say on the end of the podcast before you take us out, if that's what we're doing next, that we've just passed
Yeah.
1,000 subs on YouTube, which is a nice little milestone for us. So thank you to everybody who has recently subscribed. And there's been a raft of shorts flowing out that Dan's been helping us with that are going really well. So thanks to everyone who's engaged and watched and liked those. We'll try and keep them coming as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo all of that. I think it's an exciting time for the podcast, and a busy time for us. As we can see, we're not sat together. One of our first ones where we've not been sat together doing a podcast, but it's you have to try and fit these things in around your business. And I think whilst it's not been specifically on a topic here, we've had space panels, we've had some sort of I don't even know, Gaussium panels that are 35% efficient. We've had, what would we do if we just sacked it all in? What would you do? Where would we do? You'd be a gardener, I'd be, I can't remember what I said, but something outside of the renewables world. So yeah, it's been a really good podcast. I've really enjoyed it, and looking forward to maybe some other installer diaries themed ones that give people a bit of an insight, and probably conversations people are having with each other in the van, rolling around the country doing renewables installs as well. So thanks very much for watching and listening. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the podcast. It helps us grow, and it also means that you get informed when a new podcast is out ready for you to listen or watch. So yeah, thanks again, and we shall see you on the next one.